Gary, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. All right, we have Gary and Ryan online. Okay, perfect. All right, let's kick this meeting off then. This is going to be a city council workshop for Lake Stevenson Council. And it is November 19th, 2024, and we're down at the mill live and with power at the moment. This meeting is being recorded and will be later published on our YouTube site. So with that, I'm going to call the meeting to order, and we do have some guest business. Councilmember Georgetown.
Thank you. I really get excited when people are civically engaged and want to learn more about the city. I'm especially excited when fourth graders want to learn about the city. And so I'm very excited to introduce the Welos group, no, not group, PAC, right? PAC 41. Very nice to meet you. I would like to invite Elisa just to introduce the members of the PAC, and then we'd like to have you come up and we'd like to shake your hand and welcome you to our council meeting. We're going to be official. It's very official here.
We do things very formal here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Elisa Delgado. I am the den leader for the Webelos Den, our fourth graders with PAC 41. And right now they're working on an achievement called My Community, which they're learning about government, how things work, elections. So we thought it would be nice to bring them to one of the council meetings. So we have Ronan and Levi, Eden, and then we have two of our parents, Dan and Corey. So thank you for having us.
If you want to come up, have them come up here, we'll shake their
Yeah,
hand.
Ronan?
got to run the circle.
It's a bummer. We're not gonna have any arguments tonight. That's all.
Oh.
We're gonna do this.
Very nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
I'm good seeing you. Levi,
Nice to meet you.
Eden, thanks.
So no arguments tonight?
What's that?
No arguments tonight?
No arguments?
Yeah, because we got guests.
No, we can't argue. We have children present.
Yeah. No throwing anything.
All right, great. Thanks, Councilmember Georgetown. Thanks for being here tonight. We've closed PAC 41. So let's kick this off with city department report. That's what we have going on tonight. And we're going to start with not the first one.
Correct. Can we go to B first?
We're
and
going to
switch
go
those
to
first
B
two?
first instead of A. And that's going to be Public Works Department report. Director Halverson.
Okay. Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. As you know, we're probably beginning to deal with a wind event. You might be seeing it outside. Our crews are ready to respond. Several are on standby, and we're keeping an eye on it. But I'm here tonight to give you another department report. And at a previous meeting, we had talked about how an agreement was going with the Lake Stevens Sewer District, which is a special purpose district separate from the city. An agreement to provide a sewer main on 131st Avenue Northeast. We received the comments back from the sewer district about a week ago and reviewed the draft agreement with our legal counsel. And we agreed, Greg and we agreed that it's not in perhaps our best interest to enter into a developer extension agreement for a sewer main constructed by another government entity. Their developer extension agreement that they use, it's a boilerplate. It's really meant for developers, plats, neighborhoods that are being developed. It's not meant for two governments cooperating to expand sanitary sewer service. So it's really clunky and difficult to use. So we're going to draft an interlocal agreement, just like we did when we constructed the decant facility a few years ago between the city and the sewer district. And we expect to work with them cooperatively toward a more appropriate agreement type. In the meantime, that project, the 131st Avenue Northeast Sewer Main and Path project are advancing in design, and it's not preventing us from continuing the progress on that project. So we'll have more to share as we continue to work on this. I imagine this will come up at the joint utility meeting with the sewer district in the next, in fact, I think it's this week. So we'll have more to share later this year. Are there any questions?
Nothing.
Okay, I don't see Greg there, so I think he'll probably give us a bit more. Greg's our legal counsel. I imagine he'll give us more of a briefing the next time we bring this back to council.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, yes, good.
But yeah, I think probably better to hold off until after we've got a draft agreement together and probably had some discussion with the utility committee.
Great.
Anya, did you have something? Okay, anything else from Public Works, Aaron?
No, thank you, Mayor.
All right, great. Are we ready for A? Do we want to hold on A? 2 minutes. Let's go to Anya. Let's go to the HR department.
Good evening, Council. For those in the audience that don't know me, I'm the Human Resources Director for the city. And I'm going to keep it short and sweet with my department report today in the sake of time and power. So at the September Council retreat, one of the follow-up items was to bring back some information and updated information on our comparable cities. And what we use these for are for compensation studies, bargaining, policy review. We look at organizations typically also with this data. And how we do this is a formula by using population, assessed value. And right now I've also pulled up in the sales tax revenue for you to take a look at. And so what we do is we first sort it by population. This is a 50% above our current population and 50% below our current population. And then we do the same sort with assessed value. And then the third sort is within a commutable distance or around 50 miles. And then the fourth one I added in this time is the sales tax. And so what you'll see at each breakdown in this report is all those cities that make that cut. And then you'll see the final list at the very end with the fourth sort. Just a little tip from MRSC at the bottom of this report is it's really hard to compare apples to apples. There's lots of, and we've had many discussions about this before, is other cities have other services. And so it's really hard to just compare directly when we're looking at these cities. But this is really good information for us for many reasons that I highlighted in the beginning. Do you have any questions about the report?
I guess I have a comment. So I guess for me, everything is like kind of broken down by percentages. You know, so someone buying a home would buy a home based on a percentage of their income, and a bank would lend on that based on their income to debt ratio. And so for me, in my simple brain, I picture a similar thing happening with our government processes. I looked at all these comparable cities and said, hey, based on their staffing level and the types of service they offer, what percentage is their wages and benefits, percentage of their whatever part of their budget, if it's general fund or whatever. So that is a better comparison. If we had a city that was paying, let's say 25% more in wages and benefits for the same number of employees and the same number of whatever general fund. So that would help me in that respect, I think, with regard to policy. And other things, I mean, I think the comparable cities is realistic, but as AWC said, I don't know how you would flesh that out appropriately, but it sure seems like comparing us. I mean, some of those comparisons are difficult. You know, like an assessed value or sales tax or, you know, those other parameters. Are there other factors that we could or should be considering? I mean, those seem to be good ones. Are there other ones that we could incorporate that would help us do a better job of assessing that?
I mean, they do have levy rates available that you can look at to see what kind of levies the other cities have in their districts. But we haven't typically used that levy rate and levy amount. Those are the only statistics that MRSC posts for us, but there's definitely custom things that we will research, like the city services, and we look at FTEs count when we're looking at comparable cities. We're looking at just or like general compensation type of government, those kinds of things that we custom pull when we are doing like a salary study, which we are going to be doing one in the following year. So I actually really appreciate your thoughts there on the budget. We can use that to incorporate into our comparative city model for next salary survey.
But yeah, whatever we can do to kind of make that seem like it's another option for us to consider to look at, that would be super helpful.
Along that same line, is it? I mean, because it's not apples to apples, depending on like Arlington has their own fire department, you know, that kind of thing. Is there a way to do it by department?
Like size of the,
Yeah, I mean, if I go, you know, a comparable city HR department, for instance, seems how we're talking to HR. I mean, if you have a comparable size and we know how many FTEs they have in that department, and we can look at, okay, how are we doing in that universe? And then the same thing with Public Works, same thing with Russ, you know, the same thing with parks, those kinds of things. Maybe that would be, so we can know what each of the departments are doing. And maybe we need to focus someplace that we are not focusing.
I think it depends on what you want the information for, but like, for example, when we do a salary survey for a specific position, we will go out and look, does Bothell, so we have our list of comparative cities that we start from, but does Bothell have that same service? Yes or no? And then we go locate that information. And so we do look at the organizational structure, department specific for each position that we are surveying. To answer your question, do we have all their org charts and all of how they structure everything? No, we will customly have to go into their budget books and find that, or we ask their HR if they have an org chart they can give us. But generally we do that in detailed depth to each city. We don't compare a city that they don't have the comparator to.
I guess in that same vein, Kim, so I see the only one I've seen the chief provide is like the number of patrol officers and type officers per city, and they have that ranked by state and country. That's kind of a natural metrics. And so, I mean, that is something that we could look at, since that is roughly half our budget. That is the single largest, you know, department that we have. And so that may be, you know, a starting point, at least to understand that.
Well, I agree with you, but if you look at it, I mean, it's easy to look at the police departments. We do that all the time because, you know, every time we talk about police, we're looking at it, you know, how do we rate with the rest of them? And we're low. We all know that. But at the same time, if you're able to do the same thing with like the IT department, HR department, those kinds of things, it might show us that we have a hole where we didn't realize we had a hole. We're not doing as well as we think we're doing, or we're overloading the staff that we do have, which we think we are anyway, but we don't know. They could certainly tell us, but I think they keep quiet on that. So they don't complain. But at the same time, you know, we can do it with police. That's pretty easy. We've done that, but I've never seen anything that we've ever done with any of the other departments to see how we're doing. Public Works is a prime example of one that we don't want to fail on. And then, you know, if you look at the four corners of what a city does, resiliency is one of those. And if we're not being resilient, or we just can't keep going because of our people, not paying them enough, we don't have enough bodies in to fill the holes and those kind of things, we could fail just as much there as we can anywhere else.
Agreed.
So every year when we do our strategic, what we've been calling our strategic staffing plan, when we sit down and I sit down with each department head and we go over like our gap analysis, like what are we need to get done, we're not getting done, what do we want to get done, we're not getting done, where are our benchmarking, our succession planning, you know, how's our span of control? We do look at comparative cities and look at other jurisdictions and like the content. And I know Russ's Department of Community Development did a great job this year analyzing all of their comparator cities and how many planners they had and engineers they had, and had an analysis on how they help formulate their strategic plan this year. And so we do that behind the scenes work. We don't necessarily include that in all of our presentations to council, but we can definitely do that this year when we go into this new staffing plan. If that's what you want to see to help give you that perspective, we could go into a more detailed analysis at the next budget cycle.
Well, I think in the budget cycle for me, it was helpful to see those org charts and kind of see like process, hey, we're not asking for these positions this year, but this is what we're thinking going forward. Like deputy city administrator is one position that was discussed, and, you know, the benefits of having that, talking about span of control. And so, I appreciate that, it's helpful for me. I think the same thing with the Parks Department Director. It took me a little while to warm up to that position. And so hearing that a little bit ahead of time for me is helpful to get my mind wrapped around that, knowing, hey, this is something that's coming, this is why, is helpful, for me to make that leap when it's time to add that position. Especially a director, I guess a director level position, like that.
Great feedback. Any other questions?
I want to get into, this is getting in the weeds a little bit, just a specific question for Russ. Russ, when you did that analysis in your department, did that include the analysis of how many contractors you're using and how often you use the contracts we have for inspections or engineering or whatever?
It was. Yes, and so it wasn't, you didn't ask that question of other jurisdictions, how often consultants come out, particularly different parts of the world. But when you went to ask of what do you do, that was sort of reflecting our ask. Some cities may have two of this position, or we have a consultant that fills in this part of our work, and inspectors, they have other quality. They're really good to some of their other work, especially projects, with the special inspector. So in our internal review and our ask to the council, yes, we considered that. Did we ask the question of the other cities?
Okay, thank you.
Anything else on?
No, that's it.
All right, let's go back up to item A. Lori, you have the floor.
Okay, it's on. Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. My name is Lori Erickson. I'm the Public Works Analyst. And tonight, we're lucky enough to have a report out from Atkins Realis. We're going to be hearing from Dean Leonard, who is one of our primary consultants at the firm. And a tiny bit of background before I hand it over to Dean. But last spring, the city contracted with Atkins Realis to do a facilities condition assessment. So we worked with them to do a scope of work that included them assessing 19 of our 22 facilities. And tonight, we're going to be hearing about what the outcome was. So Atkins Realis took the time to send a small team over the summer to look at each of these facilities, assessing various systems, which Dean will talk about here in a moment. And one of the outcomes was a 10-year proposed strategic plan for us to consider. And without further ado, Kelly, can you it's going to be under my Zoom, and we'll let Dean get in here. There we go. So go ahead and join us as panelists. And then down here at the bottom, I click that little green arrow. And I always just click that one. Might need to double click. There we go. And we'll want to do presentation. All right, I think we're set. You have the floor.
Perfect. Thanks, Laurie. Well, good evening, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here in this beautiful, windy city this evening. Drove up from Seattle, and that was quite an experience. I'm here to present the results of the Facility Condition Assessment Program. This is a great program. We've implemented this throughout many cities in the US, and I just want to start by just walking through the scope of what a facility condition assessment is and some of the benefits really that you'll receive as a city as you start to analyze the results of this. So as we look at this graphic on the right-hand side, one of the main issues many cities are dealing with and facing is budget. I don't think I know one city that's got buckets of cash. Everybody's really trying to tighten the budgets. And as a result of a program like this, your facilities normally suffer. And as we see the results tonight, you'll see some of the issues that we found at the cities there. So when we have reduced budgets, or in this case, undefined budgets, when you don't know the full extent of the needs, that leads to deferred maintenance and backlog maintenance because you have to extend the life of the equipment. Just move us on the way. And when you have to defer maintenance and extend the life of the equipment because you don't have enough money to replace and repair the systems and equipment at its optimum time in its own respective life cycle. And so you're putting Band-Aids on them, you're extending the life. That leads to higher volume of breakdowns and reactive work orders. And so your maintenance staff, instead of undertaking proactive preventative maintenance to extend the life of the equipment, they're running around putting Band-Aids, fixing all the time. And there's just no end to it. And that puts your city at risk of catastrophic failure. But a program like this really, as I put at the bottom there, it creates knowledge and insight about your facilities to make strategic decisions. Some of the questions that it will answer is, how do we prioritize the reduced funding? How can we reduce the growing deferred maintenance list? What assets do we have? What condition are they in? Are they being used to the full potential? Are they compliant? How much funding do we actually need to maintain standards? When do we need to complete them? What condition will they be in as a result of any given funding level? And where can we achieve cost savings? The process of a facility condition assessment typically is in this 6-phase process where we kick off with an essential planning phase, where we meet with your facility staff, we go through a pre-assessment questionnaire, we start to understand some of the issues, some of the history of your building, some of the history of the issues that you're having at each building. And then with that knowledge and insight, we then walk every building. And in this case, there's 19 buildings that we assessed. And so we had a team of experienced facility assessors who walked every building and touched and felt every piece of equipment, every system, gathering data, gathering information, observing deficiencies and observing systems that are in good condition as well. You know, we want the full spectrum of what's in good, fair, poor condition. Then we gather all that information and we analyze that to understand what are the risks, what are the priorities, what are the costs to replace or repair some of the issues that we found. That all gets compiled into comprehensive facility condition assessment reports. And we delivered a facility assessment report for each building. So you should have access to 19 reports there where you can drill down into each building and drill down into each system and understand some of the issues that you're facing there. We also delivered a city-wide facility condition assessment report, an executive summary, which aggregates and rolls up the results of the 19 buildings into a city-wide view, really. Goes through a quality assurance process and gives you this strategic needs plan, this capital plan, so you can proactively look forward and project over the next 10 years. What are your upcoming needs and replacements of your systems? What are the risks associated with some of the issues there? It was seeing some of the buildings that we assessed here. As we said, there's 19 buildings ranging from City Hall, Food Bank, Library Building, old fire station, police stations, senior centres, and the mill. The type of systems we assess, every component that you can touch and feel within a building. So that's your roof systems, your exterior building elements, structural, interior finishes, fixed furniture, mechanical, HVAC, fire and life safety, conveyance, plumbing, security, site systems, and accessibility. For each piece of equipment, so you've got your systems, your equipment, and components of equipment. We collect good data that your facilities need to maintain them on a daily basis. The manufacturer, model, serial number, installation date, what type of system it is, asset tags, capacity, location, condition rating, estimated useful life and the remaining useful life, etc. And some representative photographs as well. So a lot of information has been collected and documented over 19 buildings. So let's take a look at the results. First of all, we assign a facility condition index against each building. The FCI was developed by the federal government to benchmark the relative condition of one building against another. So you can look across your city portfolio and understand with this traffic light system, which buildings have the greatest need, which are in the poor condition, the fair, the good condition, etc. And it's a relatively simple calculation. We take the total sum of all the deficiencies and all the replacement needs, divide that by the current replacement value. So we're lining a percentage of deferred maintenance or deficiencies against a brand new building value, if you like. And so, and turning that into a percentage. So 0 to 5% is good, 5 to 10 is fair, greater than 10 is poor, and greater than 60 is really very poor. And at that point, when 60% of the systems and equipment are in a very poor condition, it's probably time to make the decision, do we replace 60% of these systems, or is it more economical to demolish and rebuild into modern standards and modern construction? So looking at the results then, so currently we have 12 buildings that are in good condition, which is great. 2 in fair condition, 5 in poor, and none in very poor condition. But over the 10-year study period, which is the period that we did the assessment as we projected out, assuming that we don't do any major repairs or renewals, so we're looking at worst case scenario, the buildings will continue to deteriorate, right? So only 5 will be in good condition, 1 will be in fair, but 11 will deteriorate to a poor condition, and 2 will fall into very poor condition. So if we look at the FCI based on a building by building basis, you see this traffic light system. And so you see this, yeah, you can see the next day. So the far column is the 10-year, and then the next column there is the current situation. And so you can see the North Cascades Crew building is in poor condition, as well as the Davis restroom. Senior centers in poor condition. Old fire station, the museum is 29%. So that's getting on there in poor condition. And another restroom there, but you can see a couple there that are in fair condition. You can see then what the situation is going to be like in 10 years' time. And we apply the immediate, the current replacement value, the gross square foot for the calculations, the immediate capital needs, and the needs over the 10-year study period. So looking at this capital expenditure profile, we've identified almost $1.5 million worth of immediate needs. And over the 10-year period, that's going to grow to $6.4 million, including the systems and equipment over that period of time that will come to end of useful life. That's applying soft costs plus year by year inflation. Looking at the type of the deficiencies, the plan type as we call them, we've got $1.5 million worth of deferred maintenance. And that's defined as systems and equipment that have are deferred now that should have been replaced or repaired in previous years. And for whatever reason, whether it's funding, resources, timing, whatever that reasoning is, and every city is in this situation, we do have a number of facilities with systems that are deferred right now. We identified $4.6 million worth of capital renewal, and this is over the 10-year period. Just bear in mind, it's not just today's number here. This is over the 10-year period. There's $4.6 million worth of need to start planning for. Routine maintenance, just $3,000 there, and energy and sustainability, $234,000. There are opportunities where we look at pieces of equipment, and if you were to change them out now, or when you do change them out, there's an opportunity to save energy and be more sustainable as better efficiency equipment is available. When you look at the capital needs by building, we start to drill down into where the issues are. The public workshops, $1.6 million. Again, this is aggregated over the 10-year period. These are not immediate current needs. So $1.6 million over the next 10 years will be the public workshops. And you might be thinking, okay, well, those collection of buildings, they're not a high priority to you as council members, maybe to Laurie and the team, but the carpenter's shop, if the roof is leaking or it needs repainting, that's okay, because the fire station or the police station maybe is a high priority to the city. And so there's some strategic planning to do. Now you've got the numbers and the data to understand not only which are my highest risk deficiencies and systems and equipment, but what's the highest priority in terms of building. And so you can rank your buildings and map your deficiencies against those. New City Hall is another one, the police station, the professional building, and is it Lundin restroom concession buildings there. So that's the breakdown across those 19 buildings as to which has the greatest need and which is the greatest risk. Looking at the capital needs per system, we've got right across the board here, we've got exterior enclosure issues. We've got some roofing, electrical systems that are going to come to end of useful life, site systems, parking lots, typically in site systems, some HVAC, material finishes, etc. And so you've got this data where you can start to understand where the issues lie now across your buildings. Looking at the expenditure by priority, and we assigned a priority to every piece of equipment that we assessed and identified. And so priority one is, as you can see from the key there, that's life safety, fire and life safety, code compliance, ADA. So out of everything, that's your highest priority of expenditure need, if you like. And then we've broken down those categories per year, so you can see where the priorities lie. And we can see priority one, there's $403,000 worth of fire and life safety, code compliance, and ADA. So as a city council, that's probably your highest need and your greatest risk at this moment in time. And to understand where they are, then let's drill down into each individual report and understand where those priority ones sit. You can start to develop a strategic plan around the priority one issues. And then you've got priority two, just over $1 million over the 10 years there. Well, actually, it falls into 2024 there. And then priority three. Priority three is items that we've identified that are necessary, but not currently critical. And they can fall in the near, mid, or long term. If it's long term, it will be systems and equipment in year 8, 9, 10 that are going to come to end of useful life. Obviously, they're not a high priority now, but you need to be planning for them now. But you could have 2024, which we do, $2,000. It's not a lot, but $2,000 worth of priority 3, and just over $500,000 in 2025 of priority 3. And so they are items that are necessary, but not necessarily critical. And so you can then start to drill down into each one of them and put an additional priority against them and understand what the criticality of each one of them is. Again, priority by capital needs by plan type. We've looked at this: deferred maintenance, routine maintenance, capital renewal, and energy and sustainability. This is just mapped across the full 10-year period, understanding where each one of them sits there. Next 3 slides really are to demonstrate the effects of funding, what the effects of funding has against the needs of your buildings. So your buildings kind of put the hand up and say, I need a roof, I need an electrical system. My HVAC is coming to end of useful life. What funding level helps you get your arms around the needs that we've identified? And, you know, full disclosure, I don't know what funding level Laurie and the team gets to maintain your buildings and and for capital renewals on an annual basis. And so I've started off with $250,000 per year. As you can see, in the first year after you spend that $250,000, we've still got an unfunded of $1.2, $1.3 million. That will grow to $3.8, $3.9 million over the 10-year period at that current funding level, because we've got escalation of inflation. And so as we start to defer that $1.2 million in 2024, well, we're almost upon 2025, right? So in this scenario, we'll be deferring $1.2 million to year 2. When you defer that, those items now are 4% more expensive. If you defer it to year 3, it's now 8%. Year 5, it's 20. Each item is 20% more expensive to undertake and to replace that piece of equipment. And so you can see the effects of deferred maintenance. It's like paying the minimum value on a credit card, the minimum payment, right? You never get your arms around paying that loan off. It's the same situation here. As you defer systems and equipment and maintenance because of inflationary factors, and we've seen some crazy inflation over the last few years. We've just put an average of 4% here, but last few years we've been in the 8, 9, 10s. Hopefully we might get down to over the next 5 years, we might get down to some normal levels of construction inflation. But when we start to defer, it costs us more in the long run. And so scenario 2, what does $500,000 a year look like? We're almost there. And so year 2029, 2030, we get to a point where we can get our arms around all the needs and have enough funding to take care of our buildings and get them back down into a good condition. And that blue line is mapping the facility condition index against the funding levels as well. And so you can see it really comes back down into a good condition. And this is the average for all your buildings. But then some systems and equipment are going to come to end of useful life in the last 3 years of the study. And so there's more funds to plan for there. In scenario 3, $750,000 per year, we're in good shape in 3 years, 4 years' time, and we've got surplus for the rest of the study period. So you can imagine that there's no end of different funding scenarios. You may look to give the buildings a boost over the first 2 years and try and reduce some of that deferred maintenance, and then the remaining 8 years get down to a manageable level of funding. And so there's many different scenarios that you can look at in terms of tackling now the risk and needs of your city. This chart really just looks at the 3 scenarios and how it affects the facility condition assessment. And so you may have a goal and an aspiration of the city for all your buildings to be in a good condition. And so what level of funding do you need to maintain that good condition throughout the city? That's the results, really. There's data now for Laurie and the team to start working through what next, what's the strategic plan, where are the high risks items of deferred maintenance, what level of funding are we going to request from you as a city council to reduce the risk, to get our buildings into a good condition. Any questions? I can go back over any slide you would like.
Councilmember Peter Shagan, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just curious as to why, of the 19 buildings, why are you evaluating a couple buildings that the city doesn't own? And that's the North Cascades Row Club building and the food bank.
That might be a question for Laurel.
I think so we do own the North Cascades Crew building, and then I think the food bank is the not the food bank building, but it's the old food bank building up at Eagle Ridge.
The storage facility up there.
Yeah, the storage facility.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Sorry, I have a working mic now. So yes, to confirm, what Dean was referring to as the food bank is the old food bank that's next to the Eagle Ridge Community Gardens.
Yeah.
Will that report be available for further review that you just presented today?
Yeah, no, I absolutely. All the 19 building reports have been issued to Laurie and the team, as well as the executive summary report. And I'm sure she can work with you to issue those to you.
Excellent, thank you.
Hey, Lori, or maybe I forgot your name.
Dean.
Dean. So what's that format in? Is it a GIS layer, or what's it? How do we get to work with the data?
Yeah, so the short answer would be we have Excel sheets that have some of the data in a report form for us, along with a 10-year strategic plan. And we also are getting the data imported for each of our facilities into ViewWorks. So they actually went through and they cataloged each of the HVAC systems, for example, and they have their own barcodes along with all the asset information that will be imported.
Yeah. So we've got a great data collection now. And then I think that, I think we can all agree that some of these buildings you can kind of scoop out, right? Because we're gonna remodel a couple of the buildings. A couple of the buildings won't be around in a year or two. So we have got some great data base to be able to really work these numbers and weed out what's important and what's not.
I like it.
You like that?
Yeah.
I like it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good point there. What normally comes from this is, where does the funding come from? And when you look at your city buildings and the way that we use them now, we're working in this new hybrid way of working. And I've worked with other cities to identify what's the utilization rate of our buildings now. Do we take an opportunity to consolidate? Can we move departments into a more centralized building where they can communicate better and free up some space then to generate revenue from redundant buildings that will pay for some of the capital plan at your important buildings. So as you mentioned there, looking at strategically about your buildings and what needs to be disposed of and what you can consolidate is a good opportunity now we've got the data.
Any other questions for Dean? Ryan, are you up there? Got any questions?
I'm here, no questions.
Okay. Hey, well, Dean, I appreciate you and your firm's work on this. It gives us a great set of data. I think that we should also make sure that we're, as new assets come on board and new equipment comes on board, we're updating this. I like Dean, but I don't want to pay him a lot of money to come out here every couple of years, right? So
You don't like him that much?
I like him. I mean, I'd probably take him to lunch, but I don't want to pay for it.
Well, the good news is that you got a good database that's now going to be refreshed. And so this is multifaceted. We collect the data at the granular level, at the O&M level, the operation and maintenance, so that can feed into your CMMS. And so that helps your operation and maintenance. But also then we roll it up to a system level for a capital needs. So you kind of getting 2 for 1 in this program, where it really helps your facilities get that insight and really start to plan strategically over the next 10 years.
Yeah, I like it. Laura, you got anything?
No, I don't.
All right. Dean, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's go next. I think we got,
Excuse me, Brett.
Yeah.
I appreciate PAC 41 coming, and thank you for sitting still. I know this was pretty dry information, but they're kind of melting there in
All
the
right.
front row.
all right, thanks for coming in.
Give them an
There's
opportunity.
2 more hours. 2 more hours, guys.
Thank you.
I wish I was PAC 41.
I know.
As you can tell, we need some fundraising out there. So.
All right.
Well, and I thought my item was exciting, but they're not going to stay for it.
All right,
So,
Christy, you're up.
good evening, City Council. Christy Schmidt, Planning Manager. Tonight, I have the pleasure of presenting the 2025 work program for you. And I will hustle through it. Dave just messaged and he is up after me with one of the items on the work program, and his power is flicking at his house. So this evening, I'm going to provide an overview of the current work program. And the purpose of this is to provide you some 2-year averages on the work that we're doing in our department. And this would be the current work. I know City Council primarily sees long range, but the purpose is to provide you some background on current projects to set the base for when we come forward to you in December with a fee cost proposal for recovery for 2025. So one of the other items we'll be looking at this evening is the 3rd quarter statistics and where we're at currently, along with our update of where we're at the 2024 work program. Because the items that we didn't finish in 2024, they are getting carried over into 2025. So taking a look at how our averages have been for the past 2 years, we've processed 200 land use applications, over 1,000 building permits. We also average around 53 active code enforcement complaints. And if you haven't met our code enforcement officer, Cam, yet, we'll be thankful. He's a nice guy, but he's very busy. And in addition, out of those cases, we have 153 average active code enforcement cases. In addition to those items, there's other projects that our department takes along, and you'll see that Russ Wright, our director, a lot of these fall in his lap, such as economic development. We are, I believe, one of the #1 departments for public records requests. I would love to give that reign up to another department. However, for now, we are just responsive. In addition, we're looking at a website refreshing up for our department, and we are required to take a look at updating all of our forms. So if you, as a resident, apply for any types of forms or permits on our website, please make sure to go to the website to download the new ones. And as I noted earlier, we'll be coming forward to you in December for new fees updates for cost recovery in response to 5290. In addition, we are doing a file migration software project, as is most of the departments here in the city. I think we might be number 3 or number 4 on the list. Then also we process business and solicitor's license through Department of Revenue and through our city system itself. So those are our current project programs coming forward. Let's take a snapshot for third quarter, which is July to September 30th. This was in your packet. In your packet, there was a bar chart actually. I've cut it and translated it for the purposes of the presentation. Just listed the numbers here for totals. I won't go into the details, but if you have questions, you can see our third quarter permits. We are up 2.5% from last year, so that's good. So the long range work program, you will be hearing from Dave next. He is really our designated long range planner here at the city. Well, our long range program is very important. It literally defines how our community looks, feels, interacts, and how things get built. So it's a very important public process, which is why both the Planning Commission and the City Council are involved, as well as public engagement process. And I just put in here, I love the lake sticker. So what's in your packet for the 2025 work program? If you haven't been involved in it before, we are required. Did you get it up? Yeah, it's been down. That's okay. We present it to Planning Commission first, which we did on the 6th. We didn't have any substantial changes from the Planning Commission. So we are here this evening to present it to you, the council, with the idea of getting some feedback and information from you. Then in turn, the Planning Commission is coordinating with the city clerk to get a joint meeting with you in January. And at the meeting, we anticipate getting feedback as well as going over our 2024 accomplishments. Then we'll circle back and adjust our work program as necessary. So you adopted the comp plan back in October. It's now in effect. We have new zoning maps. And so with the adoption of that sends a whole domino effect for our work program. For next year, it's broken down into 4 different categories. We have a lot of implementing projects for code changes. And in addition, we'll have our annual docket coming up again. The deadline is January 30th, potential annexations, and then whatever else happens. We always have that miscellaneous bucket because there's always something that pops up. So just to go through these on a high level basis, for the implementation projects, these are the code changes as a result of the comp plan being adopted. We have the process code update, as well as streets and parking and traffic concurrency. And this does involve working with Public Works for the EDS update. We have started this process internally as staff and have moved forward with a consultant hired on for our streets and parking update. One of the other items is the Lake Stevens Industrial Center planning. That's a carryover. And I'm going to flick to the next screen. We have housing implementation. We're going to take a look at implementing our missing middle and infill housing, a code update there. In addition, we'll be looking at critical area regulation adoption for including best available science. And one of those items is integrating into our code a critical area aquifer protection area, because we currently do not have that. We'll be looking at park impact fees, traffic impact fees, and then as far as comprehensive plan, as I noted earlier, the annual docket. We're going to go back and freshen up our sub-area plans. And then we do have a placeholder here for the utility element and the sewer update, and that just depends on the outcome of any integration with the sewer district. Annexations. I have a category here for that because there is room for citizen or city-initiated annexations. We still have areas of our UGA to be annexed. And then our miscellaneous bucket, which really falls into Russ's court. We have SCT, Economic Alliance, and then the sale and development of the existing city properties. And with that, I throw it open to City Council for questions or discussion, and any feedback. We'd really appreciate it. And if you have nothing, I will move it on to the first item of for work program of the year.
Christy, Gary Petersagan here, raised my hand.
Yes, Gary.
Quick question for you. You've got a number of changes that are taking place here in the immediate future, fee increase, process code update forms, things of that sort. What kind of outreach are you folks doing to the builder community that interacts with you on a daily basis?
So at this point, we have not interact. Once we have a draft of our proposal, we will advertise that and seek input on that. Our first thing is to get feedback from the city council as far as fee updates and methodology process. Because I'm sure master builders will be interested in that.
Yeah, I guess moving forward after we get all the preliminary stuff done, I would encourage you folks to do some sort of open house with the builder community to explain all these things so that we don't have this question as the process goes on. Why did you do this? What changes are being made? Things of that sort. Just some proactive outreach, I think, would be very helpful.
I would agree, and I appreciate that because the master builders will be key in this. They were key in getting the 5290 implemented, so I'm sure that they're keeping tabs and their eye out to see how the cities respond.
Correct. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other comments or questions from council?
I'm seeing none, Chrissy.
All right, well, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Great job. Good work.
Thank you.
All right, let's go to the last discussion item of interim ordinance to comply with SB 5290. David.
All right, thank you, Mayor. I'm just going to give a super quick PowerPoint. This builds on some of the information that Christy was just mentioning, and I would note that the master builders have been very much involved with 5290. They put out a white paper. They've been very proactive in making sure that cities are complying with the Local Review Act. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about our approach in adopting an interim ordinance, and then happy to answer any questions. All right. So what we are proposing is, as part of our work program, we're working on a pretty large update to chapters 1416A and 1416B, which collectively are known as our process code. So deal with things like noticing, appeals, a whole lot of other things associated with land use applications. So basically, as we were developing that, we've also been aware that Senate Bill 5290, there are multiple components of that. So that was a bill that was approved by the state legislature in spring of 2023. Certain components became effective in July of 2023, and now several additional specifically related to review timeframes for different development project permit types are coming into effect on January 1st. And so we wanted the opportunity to continue to work on the larger process code, really restructure that, streamline that, but we do need to comply with these Senate Bill 5290 timelines in the interim. So we are proposing the adoption of an interim ordinance that would carry us forward until we can adopt permanent regulations for the larger process code update. So the major components that are going to be coming into effect on January 1st, the kind of the main one is that right now, land use applications and other development project permit types are subject to a 120-day review period where you need to have a decision out within 120 days. What Senate Bill 5290 did is it created kind of a more tiered approach depending on whether there's public noticing, whether it's public noticing in a public hearing, or if it's a straight administrative permit. It also introduced a number of implementation items specifically related to fees and documenting how the city is making substantial efforts to try to streamline the permitting process. And a lot of it is geared specifically towards the housing market and trying to get more housing built and reduce some of the red tape. So there are some regulations about how cities can only charge up to 80% of the project fee at application and are required to return certain permit fees if timelines aren't met. There are some exemptions for that, and Carol Manis, our building official, and Russ and Christy have been very proactive in making sure that we are meeting at least 3 of the required items on that list so that we are exempt from some of those requirements. So as far as the timelines, so a type 1 application, something like a shoreline exemption where you are not required to do any public notice and there's not a public hearing, that is going from a maximum timeline of 120 days down to 65 days. A type 2 application such as a short plat, well, short plat's not a good example because there are different ones for subdivisions, but a type 2 application that includes public notice but no public hearing is going from 120 days to 100 days. And then type 3, 4, and 5 land use applications. So basically applications that involve both public notice, and both public notice and a public hearing are changing to a 170-day timeline. So hopefully I'm still on because the power is flickering on and off. There's also is some guidance from Commerce as far as how Senate Bill 5290 interacts with the Subdivision Act. And their guidance is to continue to try to process subdivisions within the 90 days. And so for preliminary plats and then 30 days for final plats. And then just another note that applicants have the option to waive or delay review timelines, basically can work collaboratively with the city to waive those, to provide some flexibility. So since my power seems to be unreliable, I'll get through this real quickly. Interim ordinances are allowed by state law by RCW 3670A390. Basically, the city would be required the city council can adopt the interim ordinance without a public hearing, so long as a public hearing is held within 60 days of the date of adoption. The city is then required to either adopt those permanent regulations within 6 months, or that 6 months can be extended out to a year if the city develops a work plan. That's what we are planning on doing as part of the larger process code work. And then as needed, the interim ordinance can be extended beyond that year in 6-month increments if the city council holds subsequent public hearings. So with that, just as far as the next steps, we're going to be making some additional refinements to the red line code language that was included in attachment 2. We're asking the city council to adopt the interim ordinance on December 10th. We wanted to come before a workshop first, just so you weren't coming into that meeting cold and had some kind of awareness. This is something 5290 that we have been talking about. The public hearing would then need to be held by at least by February 8th, within 60 days of that December 10th adoption of the interim ordinance. And then as mentioned, staff is working on developing a larger work plan, and then would be working on developing that permanent code language for adoption following public hearings before both the Planning Commission and the City Council. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for David? I don't see any other hands up.
I might just add one point of clarification. I'm kind of seeing some tired faces here. So really the impetus to do that is just a first step for us to become compliant with the new state law by the required deadline. And that's really just to adopt these tighter timelines and then spend more time on permanent regulations where we want to then do really the streamlining work to make sure that our processing code meets the needs of our community a little bit better, the building community, and it's a little bit more thoughtful where we can streamline it and really look for effective improvements rather than just these mandated timelines. So again, it's a phased approach.
Anything? Anyone?
Makes sense.
Last call. All right, David, great job. Good work.
All right, thank you.
We are at the end of our agenda, and I'm going to call this meeting adjourned.
You add agenda items? No executive session?
Nothing.